We're gonna look at this Torah portion called Balak. Just very quickly an overview. Balak is a fella who sees the Israelites as a threat and hires a dodgy prophet to try and curse the people. So this is a plan hatched against God's people, and I'm just going to begin by reading a little bit of Psalm 2, which is, I think, quite funny. The Lord speaking, he says, all right? Can you read it? Psalm 2 says, "Why did the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens laughs, the Lord holds them in derision." Now, people have asked, why is there a Torah portion named after this fella called Balak who wanted to destroy God's people? And a commentator suggested that maybe it's because we have to recognise him, because maybe we'll meet Balaks of our own collectively or individually, people whose reaction to God's people is just instantly to want to curse them. So we're to recognise this kind of a character. Now he came from, he's a Moabite. Now the Moabites were, when Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed and Lot fled, his wife got destroyed. Well, his daughters got him drunk and basically had it away with him. And the kids that they had were Moab and Ammon. And Moab is where you get the Moabites from. So this is this fella's lineage. You can read about that in Genesis 19. They were always fighting. They were always fighting with the Amorites and the Ammonites for supremacy. They were not the most settled bunch of people, I would say. And they were also, in the area they were in, they were actually like the little runts in the area, so they probably had a bit of an inferiority complex. They had the other powers around them were a bit more hefty. But it says in the Torah portion, it says that when Balak saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites, so this is what we're coming from here. Balak saw what Israel did to the Amorites, and he freaked, and he knee-jerk reacted. And what he failed to do was he failed to ask, why did the Israelites do this to the Amorites? Why? And the reason was because the Amorites attacked them first. The Israelites were quite a peaceful people, just wanting safe passage. No, the Amorites attacked them. The first Amorite war was with the king Sitchin, who, it says in the scriptures, mustered his entire army and marched out into the desert to attack Israel. That's why Israel attacked them. The second one was with King Og of Bashan. He done the same. He marched out to attack the Hebrews. Now what they did was quite natural. They defended themselves and they were victorious. But this freaked Balak out. He just, his instant thought was not, oh, we better leave them alone. His instant thought was, we've got to try and destroy these people. He didn't see the whole picture, and we do know people that are out there who do fail sometimes to see the whole picture. Now, you could ask him, Balak, when he sees what the Israelites have done, is he personally afraid? Like fearful himself? Or does he just see it as an opportunity? You know the way leaders do sometimes? They'll see a disaster or a crisis as an opportunity, and they'll play on people's fears, and they'll big the fear up, and they'll just feed people all this nonsense and get people into this frenzy, and they'll just do it for their own political gain. Now this is possibly what Balak was doing in this situation. There's a political phrase actually which says, never waste a good crisis. Now the thing that he's quite clever at here is he realises that because his nation or his little kingdom is the runt in the area, and the big boys have got battered by the Israelites, he knows that he's not going to be able to do this on his own. He's not going to be able to come against the Israelites on his own. So he hires some help, and he hires a fella called Balaam. Now most people, when they think of his name, think of the donkey that spoke to him, and we will get to that. But just to let you know, Balaam means stopper. And it's a similar word in modern Hebrew which is used to describe your brakes on your car. And basically Balaam, his job was to try and stop the advance of Yahweh's people. But his name also, they believe, comes from the phrase Loam, which actually means of no nation, or not of the people. And we'll mention that again later. But what he seems to be is, he seems to be a bit of the expression you could use is a cross-culturalist. He's like a bit of a forerunner of, like, the false prophet who wants to get the one world together. You with me? He's got that kind of, he's like, oh, he doesn't really particularly belong to any particular group. Even in his worship, he doesn't seem to have any particular affiliation. He's not sold out to Yahweh. He seems to be able to skip from one thing to the next. Now, we're warned about Balaam in Revelation 2 when Yeshua writes the letter to Pergamos, and it says this. This is to the church of Pergamos. It says, I have a few things against you, because you have those who hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to put stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols, to commit sexual immorality. Repent, or I'll come to you quickly, and will fight against them with the sword of my mouth. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the ones who are called out. So we're warned, we're not to have anything to do with the likes of these characters. So when we read about them, we're to recognise things in them that we want nothing to do with. And the one thing that, like I said before, Balaam he's probably well known for is the fact that he's like an advocate, basically, of we can all live together, it's cool, with the exception of, apart from God's chosen people, of course. You with me? And he seems to be one of these people who's good at puffing himself up, bigging himself up. He likes all the attention, and his motives aren't pure, they're quite despicable. He's a bit of a demagogue, as it were. And it's the usual philosophy, which is disguised as wisdom, and disguised as spiritual, and it's all about world peace. We're just trying to solve a problem. You with me? But ultimately, it's all a rebellion against Yahweh. So he is basically, he's a foreshadow, along with Balak, of the one world government and the one world religion. So we can look at him in that light. Now he's, as you see, he is totally full of himself, and he's able to speak as if he really is the real deal. And when I'm reading it, I can't help but think of some, these really dodgy tele-evangelists and stuff. He's got all this feel, and it just sounds so wonderfully spiritual and all this, but there's nothing of Yahweh in it at all. And you'll see that as we go through it. Now, another thing to note, which is quite bizarre, is Balak, when he hires Balaam, knows that Balaam can either curse or he can bless, and things come to pass. And what's interesting is Balak doesn't think, I know, I'll get Balaam to come and bless my people. No, he doesn't. He says, I'll get Balaam to come and curse them. And that just says everything about his mentality, doesn't it? I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? But that says a lot about where Balak's coming from, so bear that in mind as we go through. And what they actually did was, with him in charge of these people, the Moabites, they actually missed an opportunity. Completely missed an opportunity. They were descendants of Lot. They could have reconciled with the people of Yahweh and been in for blessings. But knee-jerk reaction, fear, just led them to this, curse these people. Completely missed what could have been something wonderful for them. Now, somebody who didn't miss it was the woman that you read about in the book, Ruth. And Ruth's all about, there's a woman called Naomi. She goes and she sojourns in Moab. And then, you know the story, I think, don't you? And all the fellas die, and then she ends up with Ruth. And Ruth, basically, when she goes back to Israel, Ruth says, don't leave me here, I want to come with you. And the actual words are, don't entreat me to leave you and to return from following after you from where you go. I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people should be my people, and your God shall be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. And Yahweh, do so to me and more also, if anything but death part you and me. Her reaction was the complete opposite to the people in today's Torah portion. Her reaction was to recognise that blessings lay with blessing God's people and being a part of God's people. These other characters couldn't see it and did miss the big opportunity. And I always try and think, what was it that they were seeing when they looked at the Israelites? And actually when you look at it, it is quite remarkable, because you've got to remember, they're seeing a people, they're organised, they come out of Egypt, somehow they're organised, they've got all in the tribes, majestic banners and stuff. What's going on here? And they've got this, I mean, if you go through it, they've got a pillar of fire. I mean, that in itself must be like, what is going on with these people? And a cloud that leads them. Food that falls from the sky for them 6 days of the week. What is going on? And on the seventh day, they all rest, and they all seem to have this supernatural peace. What's happening with these people? Not only that, wherever they go, they've got a big rock that gushes forth water in the desert that supplies all their needs and their livestock's needs. They must be thinking, who the heck are these people? What is going on? No wonder there was a big reaction to them. And of course, anybody who came against them got defeated, because as we know, Yahweh was with them. But they must be thinking, what is it about these people? So I think there's a lesson in that, isn't it? When we shine and we follow where God leads us, people are to give people that reaction of, what is it with these people? What is going on? Are you with me? And people they'll have one or two reactions. They'll either be like Ruth, and they'll go, I want your God to be my God. Or they'll have the opposite reaction. They won't investigate anything, it'll just be a knee-jerk reaction, and they'll just want to curse us. Nothing to do with us. Now that's something that we have to bear in mind as we go on our walk. So, there's a little scripture which is wonderful as well that I couldn't help but throw in. For all those who think that they can come against God's people, Psalm 125 verse 2 says this: As the mountains surround Jerusalem, so the Lord surrounds his people, from this time forth and forevermore. That's lovely, isn't it? That's something to be reassured about, even in light of the fact that we know we've got enemies and stuff. So, we know that Balak's he's missing his opportunity. And we know also, it's been stated in Genesis, the Lord says, I will bless those who bless you, talking about the people, and I will curse him who curses you. In you will all the families of the earth be blessed. So this is the opportunity that's being missed in this Torah portion. So we'll begin with Numbers 22, 2 to 41. I'll just mention that Balak's name means stopper, but it also means terminator. So it's a bit of a tough nuts name, isn't it? You just imagine him like, my name is Balak. But as was the case with these people, they would always have to say, son of. And he would have said, son of Zippor. Zippor means little bird. Which probably ruined it for him. I am Terminator, son of little bird. Forget that. Sorry. So it says, Balak son of Zippor saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. Moab was alarmed because the people were so numerous. Moab dreaded the Israelites. And Moab said to the elders of Midian, now this horde will lick clean all that is about us, as an ox licks up the grass of the field. Balak son of Zippor, who was king of Moab at that time, sent messengers to Balaam son of Beor in Pethor, which is by the Euphrates, in the land of his kinfolk, to invite him, saying, there is a people that came out of Egypt. It hides the earth from view, and it is settled next to me. Now, one thing that I want you to bear in mind as well is throughout this, the Israelite people are completely unaware that this is all being hatched, this plot against them. You hardly hear about the Israelites until chapter 25. They're completely unaware. But the point to remember is, all this is going on, and while it's going on, Yahweh is completely and utterly aware. He never sleeps, and he never slumbers, and he always looks after his people. And so So we see here Moab has gone to the Midianites. They're totally opposed to each other, big enemies. But there's one thing they can all agree on. They hate God's people. Now, there's prophetic elements to this Torah portion, so we have to bear that in mind as we read it. The thing they've got in common that makes them join together is they hate God's people. When you see things like the World Council of Churches, and they come together, all these religions from all over the world, and they come up with two things, which is one, the Pope is the spiritual leader of the world. Second thing that they come up with is, the only thing that we will not stomach is fundamentalist Christians. Christians? Oh, I thought they were going to say something else then. So, again, people joining together really have nothing in common except for the fact that they hate God's people. Now, it says in verse 6, so, yeah, I'll just move on and we'll get back to them. Come then, put a curse upon this people for me, since they are too numerous for me. Perhaps I can thus defeat them and drive them out of the land, for I know that he who you bless is blessed indeed, and he whom you curse is cursed. The elders of Moab and the elders of Midian, versed in divination, set out, and they came to Balaam and gave him Balak's message. He said to them, spend the night here, and I shall reply to you as Yahweh may instruct me. So the Moabite dignitaries stayed with Balaam. So what we're seeing here is the dark side already of Balaam's personality, because he's welcoming men who basically are plotting evil. So instantly we know that this character's got a bit of a dark side. And you know, he's listening to basically what's known in Hebrew as Lashon Hara, basically the evil tongue against God's people, and he's listening to it. He says, yeah, I'm going to consider this. So already we know that he's a bit. Now it says, God came to Balaam and said, right, this is important, he said, what do these people want of you? Now, the Lord didn't ask him this because he didn't know. He asked him it because he wanted to set up dialogue, and he also asked him it because he wanted Balaam to question it for himself and to show some spiritual discernment. Are you with me? It could just sound like such an obvious question, but he's asking him to think about it. And often the Lord will ask us a simple question, and he'll be asking it to make us stop in our tracks and think that something maybe we've overlooked. Hang on, what is really going on? What am I really supposed to do? Are you with me? Now, verse 10 says this. Balaam said to God, Balak son of Zippor, king of Moab, sent me this message. Now, he repeats the message basically in verse 11, so we'll just read that. Here is a people that came out from Egypt and hides the earth from view. Come now and curse them for me. Perhaps I can engage them in battle and drive them off. Now Balaam here is actually added to what Balak said in a negative way. So again, we're seeing his heart coming out, aren't we? Because where Balak had just said, curse them, Balaam adds, a battle with them and drive them off. That's all of his own imagining, so that just shows where he's at. It says here, but God said to him, another thing that's important, his answer comes straight away. Do not go with them, you must not curse that people, for they are blessed. Now that should have really been the end of it, shouldn't it? He's given him two instructions then, don't go with them, and don't curse the people. Now Balaam arose in the morning and said to Balak's dignitaries, go back to your own country, for Yahweh will not let me go with you. He forgot to add the bit about, because I can't curse the people. He was basically kind of leaving an open door. You with me? He was trying to make out it was just these particular people that he wasn't to go with. Leaving the door open for, maybe, he didn't mention the whole business about cursing the people. Because he had a weakness. One of Balaam's weaknesses was he wanted flattery, attention. As we'll see later on, he was quite greedy as well. Now, bear that in mind when we see what happens here, because it says the Moabite dignitaries left, and they came to Balak and said, Balaam refused to come with us. Then Balak sent other dignitaries more numerous and distinguished than the first. Balaam would have been loving this. They came to Balaam and said to him, thus says Balak, son of Zippor, please do not refuse to come to me. I will reward you richly, and I will do anything you ask of me. Only come and damn this people for me. Okay. So when this more influential delegation comes to entice him, he just can't refuse. It's just like, oh, it's getting good now. Oh, it just appeals to him too much. Now, Yahweh refuses to override this human will, right, and allows him to do it, and he knows that his appetites will eventually bring his destruction. And what's bizarre is it's like at first Pharaoh had a choice, didn't he? He had a choice whether he let the people go or whether he didn't. But towards the end of all these plagues, he didn't have a choice, because it said Yahweh hardened his heart. So we have to bear in mind that when the Lord says something, he means it, and we don't want to get led into following our own appetites to our own destruction. Now, he gives himself away here. In verse 18, Balaam replied to Balak's officials, though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not do anything, big or little, contrary to the command of the Lord my God. He's basically letting the cat out of the bag here. He's basically saying, oh, riches, oh yeah. You with me? The whole idea of house full of silver and gold. Verse 19 says, so you two stay here overnight, and let me find out what else Yahweh may say to me. He should have just said, no, I can't curse the people, and that's the end of the matter. But he just can't help but be drawn. And his big mistake is, bear this in mind, what fellowship can light have with darkness? None. Can two walk together lest they be agreed? No. And the Moabites, along with the Ammonites, they weren't nice people. They were into blood rites and child sacrifice and lots of stuff that was really evil. He should have had nothing to do with them. The very fact that they were asking him to curse the people of Yahweh, who supposedly he was a prophet of, should have just made him instantly say, oh, I'm not having that. No, on your bike. But, oh no. Verse 20 says this, that night God came to Balaam and said to him, if these men have come to invite you, you may go with them. See what I said about the Lord will let you follow down your own chosen path of destruction, because he's given us free will. He's already instructed him what he should do, and he's ignoring it because his own desires are so strong. But he says, but whatever I command you, that you shall do. And when he arose in the morning, Balaam saddled his ass and departed with the Moabite dignitaries. Bet he couldn't wait. Bet he was imagine if this big entourage and he's just basking in all this adulation. Oh, I'm Balaam, the big prophet. I'm going to help this people. He was loving it. Now, verse 22 says, but God was incensed at his going. Because bear in mind, he said, you may go. I'll let you. You may go. But he'd already told him, I don't want you to go. And I don't want you to curse the people. So sometimes we think it's all going fine and dandy. Yeah, good. But actually behind the scenes it says here, but God was incensed at his going. And it says, so an angel of Yahweh placed himself in his way as an adversary. He was riding on his she-ass with his two servants alongside. Now, the word used for this angel of mercy is actually, I can't pronounce it, but it actually denotes an attribute of mercy. And it's because this angel was there to prevent him from sinning, because it would cause him to perish. But see, another point to bear in mind is Balaam keeps asking the Lord, oh come on, what do you think I should do now? The Lord's already given him his answer. Now in scriptures we get Yeshua saying, the widow who kept going on at the evil judge saying, oh, I want justice, and it's like we're encouraged to petition God. And that's right, but there's a difference here. The Lord's already given his answer, and the Lord's already said, no, that's not a good time to keep saying to him, hold on. So that's another lesson to be learned. And verse 23 says, I think this is the most remembered bit of the whole Torah portion. But bear in mind, he's with an entourage. He's got this female donkey that he's riding on. He thinks he's loving it. You've all come for me, look at me, I'm going to travel all that way, it's fabulous. He's travelling on this donkey, and it says, when the she-ass caught sight of the angel of Yahweh standing in the way, with his drawn sword in his hand, the ass swerved from the road and went into the fields. Now, his reaction wasn't very flattering to him. This great prophet, what does he do? He beat the ass to turn her back into the road. Now, there's one commentator who puts a question across, which is to do with the animal seeing what the human doesn't see, and says, do animals see more than what we see? And sometimes are we just blinded to the spiritual world for the sake of our own sanity, basically? But, verse 24 says this: the angel of Yahweh then stationed himself in a lane between the vineyards with a fence on either side. The ass, seeing the angel of Yahweh, pressed herself against the wall and squeezed Balaam's foot against the wall. What did he do? He beat the ass again. Once more the angel of Yahweh moved forward and stationed himself on a spot so narrow that there was no room to swerve right or left. When the ass now saw the angel of Yahweh, she lay down under Balaam, and Balaam was furious and beat the ass with a stick. Then Yahweh opened the ass's mouth, and she said to Balaam, this is the donkey, what have I done to you that you've beaten me these 3 times? Now that is quite bizarre, isn't it? His response, I think, is even more bizarre. Balaam said to the ass, you've made a mockery of me. He says, if I had a sword with me, I'd kill you. Now, that's a completely different reaction than what I think I'd have had. Because he's completely ignored the sign and the wonder and the miracle that this donkey has just spoke to him. That is bizarre, isn't it? The immediate reaction for him is, you've made a fool of. That's all he's interested in. He's just completely missed this miracle that's happened. So he's also shown himself up, hasn't he, as well, because all he's done is he's reacted badly again after beating the donkey 3 times. And if you imagine the dignitaries who were with him, they've got him and they've hired him to go and with his mouth curse the people and basically destroy a nation, right? And here he is with the donkey, and yet he needs a sword to have a go with the donkey, and yet he's supposed to be able to, with his mouth, destroy a whole nation. So they must have been like that. It's not such a big shot as he, this one. Now, verse 30, the ass said to Balaam, look, I am the ass that you've been riding all along until this day. Have I been in the habit of doing thus to you? And he said, no. I don't know, he seems, he must be an odd character, mustn't he? I'd have been doing different stuff anyway. Notice that this donkey, when it's got the gift of speech, it just asks questions. It doesn't threaten him or respond him anyway. That's another thing to bear in mind as well, isn't it? Now, from this we can also gather that if the Lord can open the mouth of a donkey to speak, or indeed the Lord can speak through a really dodgy prophet, then the Lord can pretty much speak through anyone, can't he? And no individual sin or an act of perceived personality flaw in a messenger of Yahweh need disqualify the message of that person. Are you with me? You can't say, I don't like that message, and then pick up on something that, yeah, and see, and ooh, so we can, if it's the message of Yahweh, it's the message of Yahweh, never mind who's giving it, whether it's a donkey or whether it's some crooked seer. Now, the big question is, how do you know? How do you know it's the word of Yahweh? And I've just got some scriptures here which we have to quickly go over, and I won't do any commentary. I'll just read through them and just bear them in mind. The big thing we were warned about the last days is deceit, isn't it? And I think the biggest thing to do is to always think, okay, this message or this teaching or this whole spiritual way they do that, the whole caboodle, just say, does it line up with the Torah? That's the only thing that you can do. That's the only way you can measure and say for sure if something is of Yahweh. I'm just going to read some of the scriptures which hopefully point us in the right direction. Joshua 1:8 says this: let not this book of Torah cease from your lips, but meditate on it day and night, so you may observe faithfully all that is written in it. Then you will prosper in your undertakings, and then you will be successful. Right, Jude 1, 8 to 13 is a warning. Likewise, also these filthy dreamers defile the flesh, despise dominion, and speak evil of dignities. Yet Michael the archangel, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses, did not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, Yahweh rebuke thee. But these speak evil of those things which they know not, but what they know naturally, as brute beasts. In those things they corrupt themselves. Woe unto them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the error of Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsaying of Kor. These are spots in your feasts of charity, when they feast with you, feeding themselves without fear. Clouds they are without water, carried about of winds, trees whose fruit withereth, without fruit, twice dead, plucked up by the roots. Raging waves of the sea, foaming out of their shame, wandering stars, to whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever. These are the people who are going to be amongst us. These are the people that we have to be very on our guard against. It says in 2 Peter 2, 1 to 3, there were also false prophets among the people, even as there will be false teachers among you, who will secretly bring in destructive heresies, even denying Yahweh who bought them, and bring on themselves swift destruction. And many will follow their destructive ways. Oh, is it popular? Oh, get worried. Because of whom the way of truth will be blasphemed. The way of truth is Torah. By covetousness they will exploit you with deceptive words. So we have to be on our guard. Right, if we go on in 2 Peter as well, 2 Peter 2, 9 to 15, it says, those who walk according to the flesh, longing for and running after things that are unclean, despising authority, they are presumptuous and self-willed. They are not afraid to speak blasphemous opinions. These speak evil of the things that they do not understand. I've heard so many people speak about the scriptures. They have no understanding whatsoever, and the words out of their mouth are, in my opinion, evil, because they completely blaspheme all the truth of the Lord. Having eyes full of adultery that cannot cease from sin, enticing unstable souls. They have a heart trained in covetous practice, and are accursed children. They have forsaken the right way and gone astray. The right way, we know, is Torah. Following the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness. How many people do we know who love the wages of unrighteousness, and who love to be told, it's okay, it's fine, this is good? No, it's not good. The mythology of these false prophets is this: when they speak great swelling words of emptiness, they allure through the lusts of the flesh, unbridling desires for that which is forbidden, in those who have previously fled from the aimless, undisciplined life. They promise them liberty. So people who are looking for the truth, who are hungry to follow the Lord, what do? They throw them right back in to a horrible melting pot of lust of the flesh, promising them liberty. There's no liberty in living a life that's outside of God's blessing. Romans 16, 17 to 18 says, now I urge you, brethren, note those who cause divisions, dissensions, and lay out stumbling blocks, contrary to the Torah teaching, which you learned and practiced, and avoid them. For those who are such do not serve our Lord Yeshua HaMashiach, but their own belly, and by smooth words and flattering speech they deceive the hearts of the simple. So what is the antidote to all this nonsense? 2 Timothy 3, 14 to 15. Continue in the things which you have learned and been assured of, knowing from whom you have learned them, and that from childhood you have known the Holy Scriptures, which are able to make you wise for salvation through faith which is in Yeshua HaMashiach. That which you have learned from childhood, have known from the Holy Scriptures, he's talking about what they were taught as children, which was the Torah. That's the only place you can stay to be safe from these people. Another thing to bear in mind as well is to recognise how it is with these people who spout all this, oh, it's going to be fine, and they've got all this rhetoric and everybody thinks they're wonderful. Just check them out when things aren't going well. See what they're like then. When the chips are down, are they still as spiritual, are they still as loving, are they still as kind? Now, I want you to also know as well that this character Balaam is, there's an angel in front of him and he doesn't even see it. he only sees what Yahweh allows him to see. And that's exactly the same for us, isn't it? He's actually quite blind to what's going on about him, and we are as well, which is why we have to trust, and it's why we have to keep turning back to doing things his way. It might not always make sense, but it's the only way that we know that we're going to be saved. Right. So the old sages reckon that you're one or two people. You're either like Abraham or you're like Balaam. Now, Abraham had a good eye, humility and contentedness. Balaam had an evil eye, arrogance and greed. And Abraham personified humility, and that was because his mission in life was to teach that all power derives directly from God. Balaam, this is the opposite. His goal is to make Yahweh irrelevant, to focus all attention on himself and on his own ministry. Now, there's an important thing to bear in mind here. The ultimate and most deadly form of spiritual deception is not that which others practice on us, but it's that which we practice on ourselves. So we must avoid convincing ourselves that it's okay to walk the wrong path just because Yahweh hasn't struck us dead yet, or some voice hasn't blasted out a warning. Note that Solomon worshipped in the temple of Yahweh in the morning, and then he would go to pagan temples with his wives, and somehow he managed to convince himself that that was okay. And it was the same with Balaam. But the outcome is not okay, the outcome is always death. And you'll get people and they'll say, they'll pray about it and make it sound spiritual, even though Yahweh said no. And they'll say, yeah, but I'm praying about it. Like that makes it okay when they finally decide to do the wrong thing. The thing that Yahweh said don't do in the first place. But if we do insist on doing the thing that's wrong, it always ends up the same. It always ends up with someone's devastation or destruction somewhere down the line. Now, verse 31 says this: Then the Lord uncovered Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way, his drawn sword in his hand. Thereupon he bowed right down to the ground. The angel of Yahweh said to him, Why have you beaten your ass these 3 times? Is it I who came out as an adversary, for the errand is obnoxious to me? And when the ass saw me, she shied away because of me those 3 times. If she had not shied away from me, you are the one I should have killed while sparing her. Balaam said to the angel of Yahweh, I erred because I did not know that you were standing in my way. If you still disapprove, I will turn back. Finally, he's humbled. Verse 35 says, But the angel of Yahweh said to Balaam, Go with the men, but you must say nothing except what I tell you. So Balak went on with the dignitaries. Go with these men. A man is led along the path which he wishes to follow, basically, isn't he? Now, verse 36 says, When Balak heard that Balaam was coming, he went out to meet him at Moab, which is on the Arnon border at its furthest point. Balak said to Balaam, When I first sent to invite you, why didn't you come to me? Am I really unable to reward you? Now, you've got to bear in mind, at this point, Balaam knows that Yahweh's got him on a short leash. There's an angel there with a big sword. But he's also just met up with the ruler of this empire, and he knows the spotlight's on him and there's great expectation of him. He's kind of in a bit of a pickle, isn't he? It's like, they're all expecting stuff of me. But Balaam said to Balak, Now that I have come to you, have I the power to speak freely? I can utter only the word that God puts in my mouth. Balaam went with Balak, and they came to Kiriath Huzoth, whatever it says, but it means city of streets or city on the outskirts, which is probably a defensive big city on the border. Now Balak sacrificed oxen and sheep and had them served to Balaam and the dignitaries with him. And in the morning, Balak took Balaam up to Bamoth Baal. From there he could see a portion of the people. This is a pagan worship site, by the way. This is where Balaam thinks it's okay to go. Chapter 23. Balaam said to Balak, Build me 7 altars here, and have 7 bulls and 7 rams ready here for me. Balak said it did as Balaam directed. And Balak and Balaam offered up a bull and a ram on each altar. Then Balaam said to Balak, Stay here beside your offerings while I am gone. Perhaps Yahweh will grant me a manifestation. Whatever he reveals to me, I will tell you. He went off alone, and God manifested himself to Balaam who said to him, I've set up 7 altars and offered a bull and a ram on each altar. He's saying this to Yahweh. This is, in this pagan site. Now, Yahweh put a word in Balaam's mouth and said, return to Balak and speak thus. So he returned to him and found him standing beside his offerings and all the Moabite dignitaries with him, all waiting. He took up his theme and he said, from Aram has Balak brought me, Moab's king from the hills of the east. Come curse me, Jacob, come tell Israel's doom. And he says, how can I damn whom God has not damned? How doom when Yahweh has not doomed? As I see them from the mountaintops, gaze on them from the heights, there is a people that dwells apart, not reckoned among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob, number the dust cloud of Israel? May I die the death of the upright, may my fate be like theirs. Right, so that wasn't probably what Balak and all the dignitaries were wanting to hear. Now, when it says who can count the dust of Jacob, it's talking about the children of Jacob. And he's talking about a people set apart, who dwell apart, not like the other nations. And this is exactly what we read in scriptures. And I'll just read you some quotes. You are to be holy, for I am holy. I have separated you from the nations of the world to be mine. Leviticus 20:26. Do not do what is done in the land of Egypt where you lived, nor what is done in the land of Canaan where I am bringing you, or not to walk in their customs. Leviticus 18:3. You are not to worship their gods, nor serve them, nor do according to their deeds. Exodus 23:24. And you are to make no covenant with them and show no favour to them, talking about the Gentile nations. Furthermore, you are not to intermarry with them. You are not to give your daughters to their sons, nor you to give their daughters for your sons, for they will turn your sons away from me to serve other gods. Then the anger of Yahweh will be kindled against you, and he will quickly destroy you. For you are a holy people to Yahweh your God. He's talking about us as well, Yahweh your God has chosen you to be a people for his own possession out of all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. So Balaam, as in spite of himself, he's gone and blessed the people that he's been hired to curse. So then Balak said to Balaam, what have you done to me? He's not impressed. Here I brought you to damn my enemies, instead you have blessed them. He replied, I can only repeat faithfully what Yahweh puts in my mouth. And I bet he's saying that because there's a big angel standing there with a sword. Verse 13 says, then Balak said to him, come with me to another place from which you can see them. You will see only a portion of them. You will not see all of them, and damn them there for me. So perhaps he was just thinking, if he moved about and he went somewhere else, he'd see a different aspect and it'd be, it'd be okay. So with that he took him to Sed Het Zophrim on the summit of Pisgah. And he built 7 altars and offered a bull and a ram on each altar. The words in this suggest the place was like a lookout point. And Balaam said to Balak, stay here beside your offerings while I seek a manifestation yonder. Then Yahweh manifested himself to Balaam and put a word in his mouth, saying, return to Balak and speak thus. And we went to him and we found him standing beside his offerings and the Moabite dignitaries with him. And Balak asked him, what did Yahweh say? Probably expecting something fabulous. And he took up his theme and he said, oh, Balak, attend, give ear unto me, son of Zippor. And he says this, God is not man to be capricious, or mortal to change his mind. Would he speak and not act, promise and not fulfill? My message was to bless. When he blesses, I cannot reverse it. No harm is in sight for Jacob, no woe in view for Israel. Yahweh their God is with them, and their kings acclaim in their midst. God who freed them from Egypt is for them like the horns of a wild ox. Lo, there is no augury in Jacob, no divining in Israel. Jacob is told at once, yea, Israel, what God has planned. Lo, a people that rises like a lion, leaps up like the king of beasts, rests not till it has feasted on prey and drunk the blood of the slain. Not exactly what Balak was hoping for. It's a lovely blessing, isn't it, on God's people? I love that bit as well when he talks about God's not like a man that he might lie. And if God's promised something, he fulfills it. And he's promised all the blessings on us, hasn't he? So when we read that, it applies to us as well. Now, therefore Balak said to Balaam, don't curse them and don't bless them. In other words, this is going so bad now, I don't know what to do with you. In reply, Balaam said to Balak, "But I told you, whatever Yahweh says, that I must do." Then Balak said to Balaam, "Come now, I will take you to another place. Perhaps God will deem it right that you damn them from there." So he's probably going about to all these pagan worship sites, trying to call on these other gods in a way to undermine the God of Israel, but obviously we know that's not going to happen. But Balak took Balaam to the peak of Peor, which overlooks the wasteland. Now Balaam said to Balak, "Build me here 7 altars and 7 bulls and 7 rams ready for me here." So again, Balaam's okay. He's mixing pagan worship with seeking Yahweh. Balak did as Balaam said, and he offered up a bull and a ram on each altar. And that's just exactly what most Christians do now. They mix pagan worship with worshipping Yahweh. Numbers 24 says this. Now Balaam, seeing that it pleased Yahweh to bless Israel, did not, as on previous occasions, go in search of omens, but turned his face toward the wilderness. As Balaam looked up and saw Israel encamped tribe by tribe, the Spirit of God came upon him. So initially he's raised his eyes, and it was to cast an evil eye on these people. And worth bearing in mind is this place was a wasteland, a complete wasteland, right? In other words, it was a place without form, void, covered in darkness. And when the Spirit of Elohim moved on Balaam, it was like the Spirit of Elohim moving and brooding over the face of the deep. It's a bit like what happened in Genesis. And similarly as well, in Genesis, Yahweh declared light coming into the world. Balaam's about to do the exact same thing now. The Spirit of God is upon him. And even though he's looking in this wasteland, he sees things as Yahweh sees them. And when I was reading it spoke to me that we might look at ourselves, and if we look at ourselves from a worldly point of view, we might look like we're in a wasteland and we're just dishevelled in tents and there's not much happening. But when the Lord looks, and it's through his eyes, and if we look and can see it as he sees it, it's a completely different picture. Because when he looks at us, it's beautiful. What he sees is beautiful. Are you with me? And this is what it says. Taking up his theme, he said, "Word of Balaam, son of Beor, word of man whose eyes is true, word of him who hears God speak to you, beholds visions from the Almighty, prostrate with eyes unveiled." So before we can get to the good bit, Balaam has to big himself up, obviously. So this is his big introduction, thinking he's brilliant. Now, it is interesting, isn't it? He's talking about I'm the man. He's basically saying, "I'm the man who's met God, who's had his eyes opened." But his donkey actually had more insight than him, but he fails to add that bit. Now, this is the beginning of what the Lord told him to say. "How fair are your tents, O Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel?" And in Hebrew, that's actually Marv or Mar Tovu, which is, even though it was uttered by this pagan, it's a phrase that's actually used to open every synagogue service and prayer service to this day. Now, he's saying, "How fair are your tents, O Jacob, and your dwellings, O Israel?" He's looking on family life and people dwelling in the way that he's asked them to dwell. And he sees it and he thinks it's beautiful. And it will come from when he chose Abraham. He says, "I've chosen him so that he will teach his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Holy One by doing what is right and just." And this is something else that we read about in Deuteronomy. "Teach the commandments faithfully to your children. Speak of them as you sit in your homes and as you walk by the way, when you lie down, when you rise up." So he's looking at it through Yahweh's eyes, and he's seeing a people who are doing these things. And to the Lord, he's not looking and seeing a wilderness. He's seeing it beautiful. How lovely are your tents? How lovely are your homes? This is this environment that the Lord's asked for them to foster, of teaching the commandments and living in this bliss that comes about from the blessings of keeping his word. So we have to bear in mind as well, we live in a wasteland. We do live in a wasteland, yeah. And it's only by following his commandments and teaching each other and doing the things that the Lord wants us to do, that we actually dwell in tents that he can look upon and go, "How lovely are your tents where you go." That's what we wanted to look and see, isn't it? And for other people, obviously, to look and see. Now, verse 6 says, "Like palm groves that stretch out, like gardens beside a river, like aloes planted by Yahweh, like cedars beside the water. Their boughs drip with moisture, their roots have abundant water, their king shall rise above Agag, their kingdom shall be exalted." He's seeing all this beauty in the midst of this wasteland. And that's what we're to bring when we go into the world. We're to bring into that wasteland, we're to bring all this beauty, all this richness, and all this life where we go. Now, it's all speaking about prosperity and life. The roots have abundant water. You're thinking about a desert situation. Water means life, and it means prosperity. Now, we read the scripture, don't we, in Romans 8, which says, all creation waits and groans in eager expectation for the sons of God to be revealed. That's because wherever we go, we're to bring life. But we're to be doing it now. And we know how much of a wasteland it is out there, don't we? So that's why it's really important to realise our calling. Now, verse 8, it says, God who freed them from Egypt is for them like the horns of the wild ox. They shall devour enemy nations, crush their bones and smash their arrows. They crouch, they lie down like a lion, like the king of the beasts. Who dare rouse them? Blessed are they who bless you. Accursed are they who curse you. Repeating what he's already told Abraham. And it's a beautiful blessing. Again, really not what Balak was asking for, is it? But that's what he's getting. So the Lord's basically warning that if you come against his people, it doesn't go well for you. And I think it's worth noting as well here that Balaam and Balak, they both misunderstood Yahweh's intentions. Totally misunderstood, because what the Lord would have liked is for the likes of Balaam and Balak to join with the people and enjoy the blessing. Are you with me? Richly be blessed by these people who bring a paradise into the wilderness. But see, what they wanted to do was to push Israel down so that they could elevate themselves. And I think we meet people like that, don't we? And it never goes well for them. Verse 10 says, enraged at Balaam, as you can imagine he would be after this particularly wonderful blessing, Balak struck his hands together. I called you, Balak said to Balaam, to damn my enemies. Instead you blessed them these 3 times. Back with you at once to your own place. I was going to reward you richly, but Yahweh's denied you the reward. Balaam replied to Balak, but I even told the messengers you sent me. Though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not of my own accord do anything, good or bad, contrary to the Lord's command. What the Lord says, that I must say. It's interesting here, this is later on in the story, he says, I can't do anything contrary to the Lord's command. Earlier, he'd said, I can't do anything contrary of the command of the Lord my God. So he's realised now he can't really call him his God anymore. He realises he's not quite in favour, probably since he got a sword pulled on him by an angel. That probably didn't help when his donkey outwitted him. But in verse 14 he goes on, he says, and now as I go back to my people, let me inform you of what this people will do to your people in days to come. Now this is what's known as an elliptical verse, and it means, basically in the Hebrew, it means I will advise you how to make them stumble, and then I will tell you how they will punish you in the end days. And this is alluded to in Numbers 31 at the end of this. It says in verse 16, it says, behold, these caused the children of Israel through the counsel of Balaam to commit trespass against the Lord in the matter of Peor, and there was a plague among the congregation of the Lord. So he can't curse the people, he just can't do it. So what does he do? He's sneaky. He knows their blessing comes through obedience and faithfulness to Yahweh. So he advises how to get their blessing lifted off them, and that's to get them to trespass. Very sneaky. He's not a very nice character, is he? And if we read in verse 15, he says, he took up his theme and said, word of Balaam, son of Beor, word of man whose eye is true, word of him who hears God's speech and obtains knowledge from the Most High, and beholds visions from the Almighty, prostrate with the eyes unveiled. What I see for them is not yet. What I behold will not be soon. This is his parting words. As a star rises from Jacob, a scepter comes forth from Israel. He's talking about Messiah now. It smashes the brow of Moab, the foundation of all children of Seth. So, then says, Edom becomes a possession, yea, Seir a possession of its enemies, but Israel is triumphant. A victor issues from Jacob to wipe out what is left of her. He saw Amalek, and taking up his theme, he said, a leading nation is Amalek, but its fate is to perish forever. So, there's a few things to bear in mind here. He's talking about the Messiah. When he talks about crushing the princes of Moab, this refers to David, who actually did, and that's in 2 Samuel. Now, he's talking about Amalek, and we bear in mind Amalek is probably the first people group to attack them after the Exodus. They just represent what it means to be completely anti-God's people. And in fact, in the Torah it says this, write this for a remembrance in a book and repeat it in Yehoshua's ears, that I will surely wipe out the memory of Amalek from under the heavens. And in Deuteronomy 25:17-19 it says, remember what Amalek did to you on the way when you came out of Egypt, how he came upon you on the way and attacked your rear. All that were following feebly behind you when you were weary and faint, you are to wipe out the memory of Amalek from under the heavens, do not forget. Now, the Lord's saying these people are just totally against you, don't have nothing to do with them. In fact, when Saul didn't kill all people, the Amalekites, his punishment was having his kingdom taken off him and given to David. Other Amalekites who were not nice was Haman, who wanted all the Jewish people killed in the story of Esther. And the other thing to bear in mind is that it mentions the Amalekites as chief among nations. And whoever's chief among nations at any particular time can be seen to be a type of the Amalekites. And they're generally an enemy of God's people. Verse 21 it says, he saw the Kenites, and taking up his theme he said, though your abode be secure, and your nest be set among cliffs, yet shall Cain be consumed when Asher takes you captive. He took up his theme and said, alas, who can survive except God has willed it? Ships come from the quarter of Kittim, they subject Asher, subject Eber, they too shall perish forever. And the Kittites are actually the Romans who went in warships against Assyria. So the second bunch of people that he's on about now is the Kenites. We've had the first bunch, they're to be easily recognised, chief among the nations, but the second bunch are a bit sneakier. They get the name actually in Hebrew is Ha-Kenyi, which means descendants of Cain, the one who killed Abel. Now they're mentioned a few times in scriptures. And what actually happened is they eventually became absorbed into the tribe of Judah, but they taught the people to live the Torah as a legal code. It wasn't good. They spoke like Hebrews and they did that, but they weren't really Hebrews, and they just talked the talk. So they were insiders, but they weren't the real thing. So the other enemy of God's people, which will not be destroyed according to this until the end, are the ones who are inside the camp. So there's a warning in this. But the thing we've got to remember is not to just be totally fearful and shun everybody and think everybody's an enemy, because that's not what we're all about, is it? And into family harmony. And they were carrying forward the seed of the Messiah to come. So the enemy wants to get them, and the first place he gets at them is in their set of partners. And we'll see that from the way that they get killed, but the way that the downfall comes. Now, it's just worth bearing in mind that each culture and ethnic group in the world has its own socially acceptable form of flesh-pleasing, soul-destroying perversions. Now what you find happening to these Israelite people is, well, it happens, you see it happening. They get enticed. What happens is the women come, seduce the fellas, lead them off into worshipping, and I'll explain it in a minute. It's quite a really rather disgusting way of worshipping, and it's a domino effect. See, once they forgot to be a people set apart, they left themselves open and vulnerable. You with me? Once they allowed their flesh to be enticed, that left them further in danger. That then took away the peace from their homes. Are you with me? So it's just like a domino effect. So you have to always remember, the first place the enemy will attack you probably, if it's to do anything like this, it will be in that fact that you're to be a people set apart. Now, there's two reactions that we can have. We can either just be completely isolationist and go, no, nothing to do with nobody. That's not the right attitude. We're to be salt and light, aren't we, in the world, and we're to love people. But there's a difference, isn't there, between being light to the world and actually, oh yeah, I'm gonna get involved in that, and that's, yeah, I'll do that. I know that's not. See, that's assimilation. Assimilation is extremely dangerous because we get seduced, and other cultures who think things are acceptable, we start thinking they're acceptable. Before we know it, we look like them, think like them, talk like them, dress like them, eat like them, spend money like them, leisure time like them, and we worship like them. Now, Numbers 25, 1-9, got your favourite word in it, Mike. When Israel was staying at Shittim, the people profaned themselves by whoring with the Moabite women, who invited the people to the sacrifices for their God. The people partook of them and worshipped that God. Thus Israel attached itself to Baal Peor, and Yahweh was incensed with Israel. I'm not surprised. The worship actually involved going up to the idol, baring your backsides, and defecating on the ground. This is supposed to be, see what it's all about is taking something that's supposed to be holy, like this God and this idol, and defecating on it, and it's kind of a way of just saying, anything goes, I'll just live whatever, however I like. Are you with me? It's like the ultimate form of uncleanness, isn't it? It's a total rejection of everything that the Lord would have us be. Yeah, I just, it's hard to imagine, isn't it, actually? Yeah, I'm not even going to read the full description of it, it's quite horrible. So, the worship of this God was in reality not a worship of a God at all. It was the exact opposite of worship, wasn't it? And it was a kind of thing which was saying, like, if nothing is sacred, then nothing's fine. Anything goes, it's anything goes. It's basically the 20th century's mandate, which is do whatever thou wilt, the whole of the law. That's where our society's been for the last 50 years, isn't it? Now, this is God's people doing this, by the way. They're supposed to be a shining light, supposed to be a kingdom of priests. They're prostituting themselves with these women who've come in, batting their eyelids, who've been specially selected to go in and seduce them. And they're doing this. This is God's holy people. No wonder it says that he was incensed. And the Lord said to Moses, take all the ringleaders and have them publicly impaled before Yahweh, so that Yahweh's wrath may turn away from Israel. Now can you see how quickly it can descend if we don't follow what the Lord's told us to be, separate people? How quickly and how far the people have fallen in such a short space of time. So Moses said to Israel's officials, each of you slay those of his men who attached themselves to Baal Peor. So this is to be an example. Now, verse 6 gives you an example of just how far it can go. Just then, one of the Israelites came and brought a Midianite woman over to his companions in the sight of Moses and of the whole Israelite community, who were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Right? So this is one of the ones who was supposed to have been impaled, which suggests that they failed to carry out what Yahweh had decreed to happen. Now this man is brazen enough to bring a Midianite princess lover back to the camp with him. Not only that, he parades her through the camp, right to the very door of the tent of meeting where Yahweh is to be worshipped. And even if that wasn't enough, he starts to cavort with her in the perverse manner which was accompanied with the worship of Baal Peor, and this was right in front of the tent of meeting. Now, the reaction was, when Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, saw this, he left the assembly, taking a spear in his hand. This is odd as well to me, because it's not Moses who reacts, or the new high priest. This is this character, Phinehas. And it says, he followed the Israelite into the chamber and stabbed both of them, the Israelite and the woman, through the belly. Then the plague against the Israelites was checked. It's believed that when it says through the belly, it's a reference to the sexual organs as a way of saying they didn't die for no reason, they died for a specific reason. Now, he acted, it was a divine act that he did, because he realised that in this circumstance, this plague that had come upon the people could only be stopped by this particular act. And it says here, it's just as well he did it. It says those who died of the plague numbered 24,000. So before this plague was ended, 24,000 people died, and that was because they forgot they were supposed to be a people set apart. Bear in mind, this is a whole plan concocted to bring the downfall that they're completely unaware of, and yet Yahweh keeps blessing them, blessing them, blessing them. Looks at them and says, "How lovely are your tents." They're just blessed. He loves them. He looks at them. He says, "Look at them. They're in the wilderness, but I see all this life and abundance." And yet, women come in fluttering their eyes. They forget what? They forget the Torah. They forget to keep their eyes on Him. And they fall so low that they're doing defecating in front of statues. It's quite mind-boggling, isn't it? So, assimilation is definitely not the way to go. It's by loving Yahweh with all our heart, soul and strength, by keeping the Torah, maintaining the intimate relationship with the Creator, obedience to Him, which quite frankly means that we love the people around us and serve them, and we carry on business with them. We treat them with honour and respect, but we do not join them in their disobedience to the Torah to try to become anything like them. Now, I want to get something else across as well, just this as an ending. The name Balaam in Hebrew means not of the people. Now in Greek it means perhaps. Now we've been doing a little bit about the difference, haven't we, between the Hebraic mindset and the Greek mindset. Now, the Greek mindset, the thinking, it leads people to think that they have an understanding of Yahweh, and really they're a bit clueless. Are you with me? They think they understand the clueless, exactly like Balak. He thought he was, oh yeah, I've got a hotline to Yahweh, I'm sorted. He didn't realise what Yahweh was all about. He didn't have a clue, you with me? And that's what a lot of people who have this Greek way of looking at things are all about. They don't have the understanding required to have a true relationship with the Lord. For example, they think believing in Jesus just means, oh yeah, he lived. They don't understand. Believing in him means being obedient to him. Are you with me? Such a dangerous thing. They think they know, they think they understand, but they don't. And it leads them to have a foot in two camps, which is exactly like Balaam. Balaam thought that he could mix this pagan worship with worship of Yahweh. We see that today amongst people who have the Greek mindset in Christianity. They think it's okay. They're completely missing the point. See, now a Hebrew mindset knows that's not a God, as in the name, not of the people. That's not a God. The Greek mindset says, yeah, perhaps, yeah. You with me? And you see the danger in it. So we always have to remember that we're going to come up against people who are going to despise us, the likes of the Balaks. But we're also going to come up against people who are not of the people. But with all their fancy words, might impress from time to time. But we're to remember that the only thing that we can rely on to avoid being deceived, which we're told is a danger in the last days, is that we have to keep going back to the Torah. But we have to look at it through the Lord's eyes, because if we don't, we look at it and we see a wasteland. But if we look at it through His eyes, when we look at Torah, we see abundance, don't we, in life. You know, should we just pray anyway? Heavenly Father, we thank you for your word, and I pray that you'll protect us, Lord, and you'll keep us as a people set apart, and that you'll be able to look at us and say how lovely are your tents. thank you that we can always turn to your truth if we're ever in doubt. We thank you that even when our enemy is going against us and we're unaware of it, that you are watching over us. I just pray that you be glorified in our lives this week, and that we learn from these scriptures and carry it forward in everything that we do. Amen.